Since October 7, we have watched a humanitarian crisis unfold in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, with thousands killed, as well as 1.7 million Palestinians and 500,000 Israelis displaced. This is of great concern for many in my electorate of Leppington. Like the rest of Western Sydney, Leppington is culturally diverse, with a significant number of residents having family ties to the Middle East. I know that many Palestinian Australians in my electorate and beyond are desperately trying to sponsor their relatives from Gaza to come to Australia for safety. I have heard harrowing stories over the past 2 months about the great toll this conflict is taking on the community. Many of the constituents I speak to on this issue have family or friends in the midst of the ongoing conflict and are gravely concerned for their welfare. I feel the pain of my community. As Australia has done time and time again for many decades, it must act to assist those fleeing war and violence abroad, and it must do so in a way that allows fair access to support. Speaker, there is a recent precedent. We were all horrified in February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. This unjust and illegal invasion has displaced over 5 million people internally as of May this year, and more than 6 million Ukrainian refugees have been recorded globally as of July. The federal government, then the Morrison government, recognised the unfolding humanitarian crisis by making available a temporary humanitarian stay visa, subclass 786, for those escaping this tragedy. This humanitarian visa was available to Ukrainians until 31 July 2022 and granted for a 3-year period. This visa allowed for those fleeing the war in Ukraine to work, study, enrol in Medicare, access special benefits and have full work rights. Ukrainian school students on subclass 786 are afforded Commonwealth school funding on the same basis as other Australian students. The creation of subclass 786 visas for those affected by this conflict was an entirely appropriate step given the magnitude and humanitarian cost of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Just like we have seen in Ukraine, we are seeing a catastrophic humanitarian crisis unfold in Gaza. The Gaza Strip is one of the most densely populated places on the planet, now grappling with heavily restricted access to food, water, electricity, and medical supplies. Many of those in Gaza have no choice but to flee. Currently, those who do flee must apply for a visitor or subclass 600 visa if they wish to come to Australia. This visa can be granted for up to 12 months. Under that visa's conditions, Israelis and Palestinians fleeing the conflict cannot participate in paid work or engage in more than 3 months study, and any study they complete must be entirely self-funded. They are also not entitled to any form of government assistance, such as Medicare or Centrelink. Between 7 October and 20 November, some 860 visas have been issued to Palestinians and roughly double that for Israelis. These current arrangements for those affected by this conflict are unacceptable. Not only are visa holders heavily restricted from participating in work, education and access to essential services, but the underlying assumption that they will simply be able to return at the visa's 12-month expiry is at best unrealistic. Our TV screens and our social media feeds have shown a constant stream of flattened buildings and levelled neighbourhoods. For many, there is simply nowhere to return. These tenuous conditions have previously led to visa holders falling through the cracks, leading to greater demand on support such as housing and food. This, in effect, amounts to cost shifting from federal to already strained state and local government services. Given the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, people fleeing should be afforded the same temporary humanitarian stay visa arrangements put in place for those that have fled Ukraine. This will allow those fleeing the conflict a reasonable period of stay and the opportunity to work with full rights, seek education, access healthcare and government services. I call on the Prime Minister, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Minister for Immigration to act and deliver such an arrangement.
Well, I thank the member for Leppington.